So it is 12:32, and if you all have had the same experience that I have had in the last couple of days, you know that this hour goes incredibly quickly. And so I am going to get us started, and folks can join in as they arrive. My name is Reverend Jenny Norris Lane. I am the Executive Director of UKirk Collegiate Ministries Association, which is in covenant partnership with the Presbyterian Mission Agency Office of Christian Formation. And we are a network of collegiate ministries in the PCUSA and Cumberland Presbyterian Church. Right now we have over 200 ministries across the nation. And in Puerto Rico, we have not expanded to Canada yet, but maybe Alicia, we can do that. I am going to share my screen and just know that yes, a version of this PowerPoint is on the website for this workshop, but it will also be updated because I wanted to make sure that it had the accurate post-COVID information. So the title is College, an oftentimes rickety bridge from youth to young adulthood, and how the church can help. And here is why this metaphor, at least for me, made sense. When I went to college back in 1989, the path was pretty clear. You graduated from high school. Some of the folks in your high school, your counselor, maybe your church, maybe friends that you knew that had already gone to college, they helped you figure it out. And maybe there were some twists and turns. I transferred in the middle of my college career. I had sort of lots of interesting faith conversations and engagements. But generally it was fairly steady. Today, I would liken it more to this bridge on the right of your screen. It is a bridge. It can be traversed. However, as you see that there is often a huge tumultuous river below, and you can stay on, but if something happens, one board slips, the rope breaks, it can be really precarious. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what kinds of things are precarious for college students. But first, what we need to know is our young adults between the ages really of 17 and young adulthood, that is being questioned right now in psychological conversations about what really adolescence is, what young adulthood is, and when does young adulthood start? Because we know adolescence is continuing later in life. But generally, what James Fowler said in his book, Stages of Faith Development, stage 3 is where our teenagers are. They receive the faith from church, from leadership, from pastors, from parents, even from friends, but it's something that they sort of receive and they attend to. But stage 4 is really beginning to say, okay, what is it about this faith that I believe? And it is a chaotic time in the life of faith. It does not have to be in young adulthood. Some people get to this place when they're in their 20s or 30s or 40s. But generally, there is something about young adulthood, and particularly the leaving of high school and going into college or to work or to the military, that opens all of our young adults up to these questions that they had never really had to face yet before. And in the midst of this, the three ultimate questions that continue to kind of come up and be answered in different ways are, who am I? Where do I fit? And what difference do I make? Colleges really try to get students to answer these questions very quickly because, if you can decide as a freshman who you are and where do you fit and what difference you want to make, you can major in that, and then you can get out in 4 years and our graduation rates can be up, and it's very linear. This is not a linear process. It is more like that spaghetti highway that we saw earlier. And in addition to that, all of our students in this age group are experiencing a cultural phenomenon that is fundamentally different than when I graduated high school in 1989. I see this with my own kids. I have a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old. And even between those two age groups, what the 16-year-old has experienced is phenomenally different than the 11-year-old. And so some of these are, of course, things that we know. Especially this year, the class of 2024 are going to explore race relations in a way academically, with the fiction that they read, the voices that they want to hear, the artwork they do. There are those in design and fashion will be thinking about PPE and socially distanced and safety, especially if they're going into a design field that we are very aware now. Maybe we're going to need to start creating spaces differently so that we can manage if this should ever happen again. Our students have always known Vladimir Putin as the leader of Russia, which just floors me, which I don't know why that floors me, but I remember before. I remember when the wall came down. They have witnessed diversity in our American political system and also in popular culture. They have seen the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. And 2/3 of our generation identify as exclusively heterosexual. So 1/3 does not. YouTube, I'm just going to leave it there. Catholic Pope has always visited a mosque, which is very different than how I grew up in the sense of faith traditions, both within the Christian family. So Catholicism and Protestantism often when I was younger did not sit well and eat dinner at the table. They weren't at the same tables. Now we are not only at the same table, but we also are at the same table with our brothers and sisters of different faith traditions, both in North America and around the world. And the international pandemic and global climate crisis have really raised two things. One, the need for scientific investigation in the fundamental basic challenge in some societies, ours in America particularly, the fundamental challenge of those scientific assumptions. And so it's not even just about science and religion or science and faith. It is science, faith, is it true? Is it true? And so that can be also incredibly disorienting. And in addition to this, what we see is that this generation, Generation Z, from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is exhibiting and experiencing mental illness and mental health crises on a fundamentally different scale than we have before. Um, Colleges are having to navigate this, but also parents are having to navigate it. What does it mean for young adults in high school to understand their own mental and emotional health? If they have anxiety, if they're depressed, if they've been diagnosed as bipolar, if they have learning differences. All of these things are part of the conversation now, at least in my experience with high school students and with youth groups. My church is interviewing people to do junior high and senior high youth, and we are having to ask, like, if you know something, this would be great, but do you want to learn about this? Because so many of our students, this is the water in which they swim. And COVID has just added to that. And the 18 to 24, 1 in 4 people aged 18 to 24 have seriously considered suicide in the last 30 days. The article that this is from was from November. So think back to a college student or young adult that you know, and think, wow, 1 in 4. And the social and economic uncertainty caused by the pandemic has exacerbated their normal worries and anxieties. Isolation has been a major impediment, not only to finding communities of support and kind of being in those places that can pull us back into engagement and pull us back into hopefulness, but also for getting college students in particular the kind of mental health resources that we find on college campuses everywhere. And so with all of that backdrop, I am going to invite us to go into breakout rooms of 2 to 3 people. And I want you first to introduce yourself, but also to share, one, have you seen these characteristics in the youth that you work with, in the young adults that you know, and the college students that you know? Are these true for you? If they're not, what things have you seen? And also, is this surprising to you? When you look at statistics and when you sort of think about how your experience as a young adult is or was, and how the experience is now. So we're going to have 5 minutes. I know that is not very much time, but basically the question was, is this like your experience? And are you seeing this now? I want you to introduce yourself and share that. And Stephanie's going to take us to breakout groups in just a second. So. As we are coming back in, I would love to have folks unmute themselves and share an insight that came to them as they had a conversation in their group.
The rest probably won't be in for another, yeah, they're not closed yet, another minute and a half.
Okay. Well, I'm going to then pick on Riley because Riley is a college student, correct?
Yes, I am.
Where do you go to school?
I go to school at Presbyterian College in Clinton.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that generally for you and your friends, this is true sometimes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them struggle a lot, and not too many students want to get like involved in like organizations. And since I'm a leader in one of them, it's hard to figure out how to draw the younger class to come.
Mhm.
Once I graduate, they'll be knowing to lead our
Mm.
year cook, and I need to find someone that can
Oh, wow.
replace me
Right,
going.
right,
But it's the struggle.
right.
Wow.
Thanks, Riley. As we arrive back to home base, in just a second when we all get back, and then a flood. Okay, I'm gonna wait then.
I loved your resources that you use, the Growing Young. I was on the launch team for that when it first came out. And I love Fowler's work on the stages of spiritual development.
Right. It is, that book is really great, by the way. And so everybody can look at that. It was from a Fuller Youth Institute.
Uh-huh.
And so now that we're all back, I would love to hear from 3 people an insight that that you had, or something that was shared in your small group that you want to share with the larger group. This is not a time to be shy.
It's a changing world all the way around.
I think it's more helpful to ask the young people what they want rather than, at least I don't think building a program and they'll come works anymore. You need to find out what they have the time to do and what they want to do and what they're eager to do, and let them be invested in it.
Mhm.
Something that I don't know if you all can hear me. Can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
Something that came out that we didn't actually talk about in our group, and I wish we had more time because that was great. But that I've really recognized in my first year of working with young adults for the first time is that all the playbook that works for the high school and younger doesn't work, in the sense that, and this goes back to what was just said about you plan a bunch of events and expect them to show up. They don't do that. I've had to do so much one-on-one or very tiny groups, maybe 2 or something at a time, and a lot more, especially I think the pandemic's made that more practical because people are more comfortable with small gatherings, but really a lot of one-on-one rather than trying to get an actual group to happen recently, at least.
I want to echo that as I share my screen again. I am, I am leading a young campus minister cohort. And one of the things that we're seeing on college campuses and in youth programs is the fact that the one-on-one time has completely skyrocketed. The text ministry is often what we call it. The ability to know a student in a way, and for them to say, well, I'm not going to come to that group, but I'll have coffee with you. And what does it mean to have a ministry that is not a ministry with 10, it is 10 little ministries. And so that is, I want to say that is absolutely something that we're seeing across the nation, and particularly with COVID. But I would also say with any student leadership development in a campus ministry program, the one-on-one conversations and the one-on-one mentoring is in many ways much more important and takes much more time now than it did even 5 years ago, which is something that Teresa and our group shared. So I share this from 2010, which was a lifetime ago. I absolutely understand that. Because positive psychologist at Baylor University and the professors now at Azusa Pacific, she studied all of the kind of students who were doing extraordinarily well, emotionally, academically, socially. That was a big, broad thing. But one of the things that's really interesting is she saw over and over again that the students who were doing well, managing themselves and their academic career, had these 5 characteristics in common. Hope, perseverance, curiosity, zest, which is really energy management. So the management of their physical selves. It could also be considered rest and compassion. And one of the things that we know about youth groups and one of the gifts that they bring to a young person's life is conversation and experiences of these things. If you're in a small group, what do you think about? What are you curious about, as Jan just said? Hope. Not only hope that comes through our faith in Jesus Christ, that there is both Good Friday in Holy Week and Easter, that Easter is coming, but also hope that means tomorrow can be better than today, and I can help make it so. That there is a sense of co-creation with God, but also a sense of agency, that our young people have an ability to see something and address it. Perseverance. This year, I think, can easily be reframed as a year of them learning perseverance with school, with online, in person, online, in person. Compassion. Every youth mission trip or service project. One of the things that David White at Austin Presbyterian Seminary says in some of his writings about youth ministry is that often our young adults understand that they need to be compassionate. They have been involved in service and in mission through their young adult lives at this point, at adolescence. What they don't often know is how to articulate how that compassion and service connects with their faith. So to say, I do this because Jesus did it, I mean, that's a good start. But what is it that connects them not only to the people and the issues that they're engaging, but also for them as a person of faith, how they deal with the dignity of others. There's some really great resources, When Helping Hurts, and others that really talk about not only what they do, that is a ministry of compassion, but how they do it can provide dignity for others. So what's a church to do? And I'm going to fly through these a little bit because I really want to give us more time in smaller groups to add, because I know that ideas are really the hallmark of an APSE event. So there's really kind of 4 categories that I want to talk for us to kind of engage. Preparation. What do you do with your junior high and high school students? Intention. How are you intentionally staying connected to college students? your care, not only of the college student, but also then the handoff. How do you know that your college student then has another faith community? So some of these things: pre-college conversations and events, rituals marking transition. I know that a lot of churches around here do the blessing of the keys when a student gets their driver's license. They also need to bless their family's insurance, but um, during college, paying attention to their even their calendar. When are they going back? When is spring break? Right now, many of the college students in our area don't get spring break because of COVID. What are they going to do post-college, and how can we connect them with resources and also provide pastoral care to that population? And we need to think about both students and their parents and caregivers when we think about these 4 areas. And one of the things that Lindsay Groves, who is the executive director and campus minister at UKirk Nashville, says is that everything in a college student's life is a spiritual matter. Taking care of their emotional health is learning to love themselves and care for themselves. Their physical health, body, mind, and soul, but also financially. And this not only is about how to pay for college, but also we have many students that are food insecure. We have many students who have trouble when the college students were sent home last spring. A lot of campus ministers and chaplains across the nation were in that place of saying, do you have a safe place to go? Do you have a way to pay for your apartment since your work study job also just got canceled? Since your place of employment just closed, if you're a waitress, where are those gaps and how can we fill them in? Career and calling. I was in a workshop this week with Jenny Ward Holderness, and I still use this book. But one of the things that the church relations director at PC, I was also in her workshop earlier this week, said is do college visits with your students. If you're going on retreat and there's a college nearby, just take your students for a little bit there, call ahead. You need to know about financial aid for service, which is our office at the PCUSA that has not only scholarships for students that are going into college and for the 4 years, that asks them to engage this question of kind of how is all this mixing in? But also for potentially graduate students if they're going into, especially if they're going into ministry. Ecumenical and interfaith conversations. The importance of this early on, normally, this always has happened kind of in college, is the first time young adults have kind of engaged the wider world of Christianity or interfaith conversations. But now what we know, I had a student, when I said, do you know Muslim students? He goes, yeah, we have a place at my high school where they can go and pray during the day. And so then his experience really informed the conversation that my student leadership team had. Conversations about, is college the only pathway? It is my son, who is researching colleges as a high school junior, said, did you know that 40% of the people that have college debt don't have a degree from college? And then we started a conversation about what are the other pathways, or is one of the pathways a gap year for them to take that time to work or to be intentional in service and engagement, so that when they go to college, they can really know why they're going. Spiritual gifts inventories, personality tests, interests inventories. The more that we can, with our youth and young adults, begin to have them understand they have gifts. They have gifts to offer the world and to the church. This is huge. storytelling. Stephanie Fritz, who is our host, there is an amazing storytelling toolkit from the Christian Office of Christian Formation that is out, telling our faith stories, telling our stories of failure and of then getting back on the horse, telling our stories of college, what you wish you would have known, telling stories of how you figured out what you wanted to do with your life, telling stories about when faith was hard and what sustained you in that. And then again, deep conversations, mission trips, service projects. The Forum for Theological Education has a leaders link to vocational discernment resources that I highly recommend everyone look at. So this slide is only here to let you know that the American Academy of Religion says that their goal for young adults that graduate from college will have these abilities. In the first one, to discern accurate and credible knowledge about diverse religious traditions and expressions. Accurate and credible knowledge. Sometimes adults have a hard time with that. What we know, though, is that our youth that do engage in conversations or even co-youth service projects with high school students of different faith traditions. If there's a synagogue or a mosque down the street, if there's somebody that you know that practices Buddhism and they have questions about that, the more that they can engage with that, not as a threat to their Christian faith, but as what it means to be part of the human family and to love our neighbor, which is what Jesus told us to do, the better, because it then is less terrifying when they get into the military, to college, to the world of work, than it would be otherwise. Intention and care. One of the things that somebody in my group said earlier is that the first year is often hard for her college students, but the second year is often harder. And so to say, not only that they belong to Christ, that God is your home, and you don't have to be afraid of God, but also that you belong to your church family, to help them say, okay, you may not feel like you belong here in the major that you've chosen. So let's talk about that. Let's talk to your parents about that. But you do still belong in these places, and to get them to articulate that. To pay attention who is already or still in our midst. Many of our students don't go off to college, especially during pandemic, but not all of our students launch in the same time period. So to really not forget, I think that one of the things that my congregation often has to say is, oh yeah, we've still got people here. How can we pay attention? Text ministry is real. It is real. And not even for any good reason, like, I want to send you this prayer. Just a funny meme. If you know they like The Office and you see something, to send them that and say, I'm thinking about you. How are you? Visit them wherever they are. At college, there is an associate pastor at a church in Tennessee that in his youth budget is money for him to take trips to go to all of the colleges where their college students are. Is a very large church, but for you that where your students go kind of in a more local way, that's something to think about. And then connect yourself and connect your students with a local UKirk ministry or United Campus Ministry or Presbyterian Church or Presbyterian Student Association, Presbyterian, we have PSAs, we have PSMs. There are a lot of acronyms, but UKirk, meaning University Church, is our brand name for collegiate ministry in the PCUSA. And I know that those of you from other traditions or in Canada will have similar organizations. But the more that we can connect personally with a coffee or an introduction or a meal, and just to say to our young adult, I vetted this person for you and they're cool and they're going to be safe for you, the better. And there is a link to our UCRIC website. That one is to Texas, and only because I'm from Texas and was looking at that when I got there, but you can look for any state. One of the things that I get asked a lot is, what do you talk about with your students? One is just keeping in touch with what's going on in their lives. Are they dating? Are they not? Are they questioning their sexuality? Are they questioning their identity as an athlete, et cetera, et cetera? But what are the continued faith conversations that we can feel emboldened? I was going to say entitled. Title is not the right word, but we can feel invited into, that we need to initiate, because it's often not going to be initiated exactly in the same way by the students. But also to say, what do you want to talk about? And opening that, the God conversation, the gift conversation, passion, spiritual growth, opportunities. I have known parents, these conversations need to happen, but if there's a youth leader, if there is a pastor, if there is an adult in the congregation that can ask these questions. One person said to me, I asked a little bit about each question at every coffee. But they would say, standing date when you get home for Christmas break, or standing date, between things in the summer. For parents, caregivers, and family members, to say your generation of student is particularly different than the millennials, than Generation Z, than your grandparents. And so how can you prepare parents and caregivers to really support their student, and to understand when they need to invest and when they don't? And invest meaning, when do they need to say, do this and call me when you do it? And when do they need to say to their young adult, figure out how to do this and I will support you? This one in particular, I am getting ready to start at my church because one of the things it includes is conversations about mental health, and how we can help young adults have the tools when they get into college to navigate when the bottom falls out after a bad grade or a roommate conflict, things like that. But also, I want to say that there are resources out there to think about being, handing off students for those when they graduate college. Especially our young men have an incredibly significant time of grief after college and into their first job. And especially those that have thrived in college. And part of that is because their college community has been so strong. And if they move off, if they move to a place where they don't know anybody, all of a sudden they are alone again. And they have the tools to navigate, but sometimes they don't know how to access those tools. Erica Retz wrote this book. It is specifically from a Christian perspective, but she also is leading this spring a 4-week online course for youth leaders, for pastors, for educators, anyone who works with young adults as they are navigating into kind of the world of young adulthood after graduate school. And then the handoff to their additional next faith family. The reason this is here is because in my experience, what we hear a lot from young adults is, I love my home church. I go there Christmas and Easter with my family. Well, have you attended another church? I did, but it's not like my home church, so I didn't like it. Did you go back? Nope, didn't go back. So how do we help them figure out what they want in this next stage of their faith and what to think about? But also, how do we, again, make those connections? And both of these are a way to refer a student to a particular collegiate ministry, but also to think about how to encourage past that first awkward engagement. And so now we're going to have 10 minutes for us. Actually, we're going to have 9 because I want to have a way to for people to share their kind of thoughtful responses to this. Now, that's a lot of information, but I want you in your groups of 2 or 3 to say, okay, what of this that can we take? And what are suggestions that you would make that you would say, hey, we do this, put this on your list. And so, Stephanie, if you can get everybody into our breakout room. By my watch, it's 1:18, so we have 12 minutes. So if we have 9 in our group, then we can come back for the last 3 minutes.
Is there anybody in this room right now that meant to be in a breakout room?
As everybody comes back, I know this has been fast and furious. It's interesting how Zoom time can either drag on or go like a nanosecond. So I want to hear feedback and questions, and I assume that I can stay in the room, Stephanie, after it is over.
GNTV will tell us after, if they need the room for something, but usually you
Okay.
can a little bit.
Okay. So if anybody wants to have questions, but comments from your conversation.
Well, it seemed to be in our group, particularly talking about, we had like the two opposite ends of the spectrum with Bubba, who has his church campus is almost planted right in a college campus, versus my particular situation where I'm 45 minutes away from, I'm kind of centrally located between a couple of major universities in Virginia, but one's 2 hours and the other two are about 45 minutes either direction away. And so my college and young adult ministry is more reaching out to them for wherever they are. His was more about or leaning toward how can we reach the kids who are walking past our door. So that's two different ways of looking at changes how you need to think about your strategy.
That's really helpful, John. Thank you.
And our spectrum was the kids from our church that go far away to college and the ones that go to the community college down the road, and connecting with both types of kid.
That's incredibly important, Pat. I think that one of the things we know in collegiate ministry across mainline denominations is there are very few collegiate ministry offerings at community colleges. And part of it is because of the commuter nature of that. But that is something that people are beginning to talk to and have kind of some success with. One more.
I would love for is it Nona Hawley to share? She has such good ideas. And I don't want to speak for you.
Oh, well, thank you. We were just talking about ways that to have local congregations stay connected with students. And I was talking about a time when we did a come to campus event and had junior and seniors in the youth groups locally come to campus and meet with the college group and get a tour and hear about real life on campus, but also talk about what it's like to have a spiritual faith life as a campus ministry participant. And also talked about how important the contact is with back home during like the first 12 or 14 hours of being on campus, that the statistics are something like some large percentage of students have a decision to make during those first few hours that challenges everything they've thought about themselves, or challenges something they've thought about themselves in terms of their identity. And that can be very disorienting. And so to hear a voice from home or have somebody from home reach out to you that you could talk to about that is really important. And by then, none of the campus ministers necessarily know who they are yet, right? They haven't established that contact. So back home is super important during that time.
I will echo as the last thing what Nona said, is especially for our first generation college students and our college students of color. The first generation college student, as well as students who are Pell Grant eligible, they will have a moment or their first semester that they will say, I can't do this, I'm coming home. And to have somebody at home say, you can do this, and I'm gonna sort of be that web and that connection, as Nona said, is hugely important, because they're pioneers in their family. And that's, I think, where the faith family can step in, and to think about if you're part of the web, and then college ministry is another part, their family and their friends are other parts, then as they walk across that bridge, they can get to the other side. So thank you. We are 3 minutes over. I apologize for that. But if you have any questions, please stay around and I'll be here. Or you can email me. So
I'd say that it was the best 3 extra minutes, and beyond that, the best workshop yet. So thank you for all your effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Will your slides be available to us?
Yes, so there, I will put the new version of slides up, as well as I will send into GNTV some of the suggestions that you all have made, and put them in kind of one document. And so that'll also be on there. My email is ukirknational@gmail.com.
Good. I was going to ask if you're available beyond this so that I can.
Yes. Can't type my own email address. Okay. Stephanie, make sure I spelled that right. All of a sudden I was like, and Nona, you're at the University of Delaware?
I am.
Okay. I think
Yep.
did you and a colleague come to the anti-racism conversation we had in September, or the training?
Yes, I think yes, I did. I've done a bunch of virtual continuing eds. I had to think for a minute. I did.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, Nona, I think I remember that name.
There are not a lot of us out there. Yeah, it was helpful. Yeah.
And so, and Teresa, you're in Conway, Arkansas.
Yes.
And your group has, you have quite a large college group from what I remember.
We have a lot on our roster. We do not have a real active, come to meet and have a Bible study kind of thing. I've got a lot of students on my contact list, but I would not call it active.
And so,
unfortunate.
Right. And so what kind of pastoral care or just intentional connection do you maintain with those students?
It's social media. I frequently text them, or just, like you said, send them just a little short message. And that seems to be helpful. I have gone through the process of having an intern who was a student on campus. And so we tried a variety of things. Of course, COVID has really made everything more difficult, but I'm looking for new ideas of ways to stay in contact. This has been very helpful.
So I don't know. I think Rebecca just left. She oversees middle school to age 35 at her church in Virginia.
Golly.
Right. We were all like, we're not worthy. Anyway, one of the things that she said is that it is very difficult to get the college students. Once they hit high school, they kind of scatter as a youth group. And so they aren't really a group when they come back. But she does do a college panel in the winter. And that was incredibly helpful, because she said, you have wisdom to offer these high school students. What do you wish you would have known? And so it was very interesting for that to be the thing that her college students really wanted, like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And Zoom made it a really helpful thing.
We started a few years ago too, doing a gathering at Christmas break, for them to all kids who had been in our youth group and were away at college, making sure they had that time to be together. And you were talking about belonging and that sense of being reconnecting with those kids who they felt they were part of that group. And I think that's been a really strong thing to help. I tend to stay more connected to the kids who have gone through our youth group and trying to follow them wherever. You mentioned somebody who was in ministry at UKirk at Nashville, and we've got one of our youth group kids over there, and she has become very involved in the UKirk ministry. And I'm glad to see that those kinds of ministries are up and active. I do think it takes so much one-to-one time. You've just about got to be a dedicated person to that. I mean, I'm a generalist, so I was, cradle to grave in my position, and UKirk was just one of the things under my hat. So it's a challenge, but a very important ministry, I believe.
Right.
One of the churches in our presbytery, actually a couple of them now, support the campus ministry and my work with the students by giving me several $100s worth of Panera gift cards every year, so that
How
I
wonderful.
can meet students for coffee or buy them lunch or whatever needs to be done. And it's great. It's terrific because, that boosts my program dollars, and I can just hand a card to a student if they need it, or say, you take the other students out with this. It's been lovely.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Cheryl and Shelley, where are y'all?
I'm in Bellevue, Nebraska. I'm the director of youth ministry, and I was telling the ladies in my group, we have till they graduate, give them their diploma, and then welcome them back in 10 or 15 years when they have babies. Because we thought, all the kids go off to college, they don't stay. But a lot of the kids are doing, like somebody was saying, taking a gap year, or there are more kids that are staying locally. We have Bellevue University, we have University of Omaha, we have Creighton. So there are more kids staying locally. And I've talked to the Christian Education Committee for 2 years now, saying, hey, we really need to do something. We really need to do something and I'm part-time and I work another job, so I can't really take ownership, but I'm like, okay, 2 years, I'm going to have to do something because nobody else is going to do it. Because I just feel like we're missing out on so much, just letting the kids, congratulations, bring back your baby when you're ready, go stumble and bumble through the next 10 years of your life without your church's support, and we'll see you at Christmas,
Right. One, that is not an unusual experience. And so just know you're not alone. The other piece of that, I was in a conversation this summer with the Office of Christian Formation and Presbyterian Youth Workers Association. And we asked the youth directors that were on the call, what do you want the campus ministry to be like where your students go off to college? And there was silence. And this one youth leader said, I got to be real honest. I just never assumed they'd be involved in campus ministry when they went to college. And, but it is this 10 or 15 years when you come back, have a family, this is what adults do. And we know that's not exactly true, that they sometimes don't come back.
Right.
Our campus ministry at University of Arkansas up in Fayetteville offers weekend retreats at their campus ministry center, and their university students will come and be part of that with us. And I did not utilize that because, well, like I said, I've got two universities in my town, and don't have very many students that go up to Fayetteville. But I thought that was such a great idea, because that way the kids are familiar with the building. They know where it is, and then when they get on campus, it's a place to go. It's not just, well, can I find that? And, I thought it was a good idea on their part.
Right. Well, and one of the things, Shelley, is so on the UKirk website, we have, so you want to start a UKirk. One of the things that we know is they're very contextual, but two models that seem to work fairly well are, if there are any other Presbyterian churches kind of in that area,
Mhm,
and to say, are you seeing the same thing?
mhm.
And, where's the energy? Where is the conversation? Or
Mhm.
even just to